like what I do because when you work on property insurance, it's kind of a blend of the math and physical sciences as opposed
Okay.
to on the life and health side, it's more of the math and social sciences. If you're trying to get into the industry is network, that
Okay.
was, I mean, I think that goes, the same goes for any industry, but that is really going to help you out a lot with opportunities, just knowing as many people as you can, especially in the actuarial space because it's such a small community that as you like get further into your career you start seeing a lot of the same people and networking is really important.
Joining me today is Will Ringhofer, and he is an associate actuary at Steadily in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Will, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Excited to be here.
Great. So let's go ahead and get started. Will, in the most simple words that you have, can you explain what an associate actuary does?
Well, I'll define what an actuary does. I think that's
Okay.
probably the simplest approach. So an actuary, I'd say, handles two things, or really one thing, but it has two components. And one of those
Okay.
components is risk or uncertainty, and then the other component is um, finances. So, like from a financial context, how do you deal with risk and uncertainty?
Okay. So now, what made you get into this career path, and kind of how did you get your start in it?
Well, I originally wanted to do engineering. I was always
Okay.
really good at math and science and those kind of subjects. And in high school, I took some courses for engineering since my high school actually offered that. And I realized I did not like it at all. And so, literally in the class,
Yeah.
I'm there researching like what other careers would I be good at that I might have an interest in. I was,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, really good at math, and so I searched like math-based careers, and I found out what an actuary was, and
Okay.
um, read the definition of what an actuary is and exactly what they do, and yeah, I mean, just kind of went from there, and so no regrets ever since then. I love it.
That's amazing. So now, what parts of your job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
So for me, I'm a property and casualty actuary. So there's a lots
Okay.
of different actuaries. I mentioned that actuaries deal with risk and uncertainty from
Yeah.
in a financial context. So there, I mean, that opens up a lot of doors in terms of like what you can work on.
Yeah.
There's life and health actuaries that work in like life insurance, health insurance, or they maybe like do valuations and work with retirement accounts and stuff like that. I work in the property and casualty space,
Okay.
so I deal with more like property insurance, auto insurance, and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um, I like what I do because it's when you work on property insurance, it's kind of a blend of the math and physical sciences as opposed
Okay.
to on the life and health side, it's more of the math and social sciences.
Yeah.
And so my personal preference is the physical sciences. I understand them more. I like working with them more. When you're thinking about the physical sciences, you're thinking about how do wildfires or a hurricane, those kind of catastrophic events, how do those impact um, insurance premium and how should you price a policy if
Okay.
you're expecting those events over the course of a long period of time.
Yeah. And so now, kind of on the flip side, what parts of your job do you think are harder, emotionally challenged, or maybe just not so interesting or fun?
Well, I'd say it's very statistics focused, and any actuary will tell you the worst part of being an actuary is taking exams and like those statistical exams,
Okay.
and even the upper level ones where you start getting into the weeds of like regulations and stuff like that. They make them very challenging, and so is 100% the hardest part about being an actuary. The pass rates for those exams are very
Oh,
low, and it's very challenging to pass them. I think it's like 10 exams, and that can vary depending on the track that you do. So
wow.
it's a marathon as opposed to a
Yeah.
sprint to try and get through all of those.
Yeah. And so now, what do you think that people might underestimate or overestimate about this role?
I think people might overestimate, I guess going back to the exams, how easy it is to get through them.
Yeah.
It is really a journey. Like people spend like decades, maybe
Wow.
even. Like I'm sure there's people that have spent 20 years trying to get through them. Most
Wow.
people pass all of them within 10 years. Um, but that some people might overestimate, especially going into your first exam. I thought like, oh yeah, there's going to be a breeze to pass like my first actuarial exam, but it is, um, I mean, like I almost failed my first exam. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
I mean,
Wow.
like I mentioned, most people do fail an exam over the course of their career. So that's one thing I overestimated coming into it. Another thing is how much like being an actuary relates to managing a business as a whole. I mean, you've got to be
Okay.
really interconnected with how the business operates, how the finances of the business, and all of that. In terms of underestimating, I think maybe I did answer that. I don't know if so. I underestimated how much involvement you do need to have
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. And so now going back to these exams, why do you guys have to take them? How often do you guys have to take them? Over what period of time do you have to take them? Could you go a little bit deeper into why the exams are a thing?
Yeah, so the actuarial exams, they kind of make sure that as an actuary, you understand basically the concepts of insurance, risk,
Okay.
and uncertainty, and make sure that you have a good foundation for what you're going to be working on later on in your career.
Okay.
And so a lot of the like you don't necessarily use all of the statistics in the exams, but if they do come up, you probably should know them. You should know how statistics work and how probabilities function to like in the real world in order to use those statistics to translate that to the real world to assign to try and quantify something like financial impact to
Yeah.
a probability and a dollar amount.
Yeah. And so you said that some people might take decades to complete them. So are they not able to become actuaries until all the exams are completed, or how does that work?
So you can be an actuary. I mean, if you don't have a credential, so yeah, going again deeper into the exams, there's two credentials you get as an actuary, or
Okay.
that you can get, at least within a certain society. And so I'm in the Casualty Actuarial Society. The first designation you get is an associate of this or associate of the Casualty Actuarial Society. So that's
Okay.
ACAS. And
Okay.
then the second designation you get is a fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society, and that's an FCAS. To get your ACAS, you need to pass, I believe, 7 exams, 6 or 7
Okay.
exams. They always change the how many exams you need to take. And then
Okay.
to get your second designation, the FCAS, you need to take an additional 3 exams. There's a
Okay.
lot of people that just stop after the first designation and they're just career ACAS, or in the other society, it's an ASA as opposed to an ACAS. It's the Society of
Right.
Actuaries. A lot of
Okay.
people stop there in their career ASAs or associates. We'll just say that to simplify it. They're career associates and they're happy, being career associates for the rest of their
Okay.
career, and that's totally fine. There's
Yeah.
you could argue that career associates are just as good as some fellows, of
Okay.
either society. So
Okay.
if you don't get your designation, you're probably going to remain as like an actuarial associate or actuarial assistant. Like it's if you're looking at titles, it's like it won't their title won't probably won't say actuary. It'll
Okay.
say actuarial and then some kind of
Okay.
description to that.
Okay. I see. And so now, what are some of the biggest employers of this industry?
So I think if I remember correctly, I think the biggest employer is actually a consultancy firm called Willis Towers Watson.
Okay.
So they help a lot of companies with anything actuarial related. There's also Milliman is a big one. Um, I mean, think about all the big insurance companies,
Yeah.
they hire
Yeah.
a lot of actuaries.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, those would be the first two that pop in my head are Willis Towers Watson and Milliman, though.
Okay. Perfect. And so now going into kind of your daily schedule and your tasks, what does your schedule look like? What do you spend the majority of your day doing?
I work at a startup. So
Okay.
again, this kind of goes back to like actuarial or actuaries being, more heavily involved in the business than you might think.
Yeah.
And so currently my day to day is so the first most of what I work on is actuarial related. So currently I look at how competitive are we in certain markets or in certain states. What do our losses look like compared to our
Okay.
premium in different markets? So like claim payments would be losses for an insurance company.
Okay.
Um, what do those look like compared to our premium? Do we need to adjust our premium based on our experience in
Okay.
those markets? So I'm looking at all of that. I'm also looking forward, seeing in the future how much premium do we expect to write? Do we need to make adjustments based on our mix of business, based on expectations in the future, and how projections are changing?
Yeah.
And then the other side of that, actuaries are also very data heavy. So I'm kind of like a data analyst for the company as
Okay.
well and helping out with various tasks, whether it be like marketing or sales if they need help with looking at different metrics. Sorry.
Okay. Very
If
good.
they need help looking at different metrics, then I can, write some SQL queries to help
Okay.
them visualize some data
Yeah.
that can help them in those departments.
Okay. And now for actuaries in general, would you say that it's a 9 to 5 job, or do you see that actuaries have to take some work home sometimes?
It depends on the role,
Yeah.
and a lot of actuarial positions are definitely seasonal.
Okay.
So, for example, I used to work in life and health insurance as a life and health actuary. So, um, the big like season for that is Medicare pricing. So if you're like pricing Medicare plans, then like you're
Yeah.
really focused on doing that in like the beginning of the year all the way throughout the end of the summer because I was on the other side of that where I was actually reviewing those plans. And so like actuaries both like prepare the pricing for Medicare plans, and then you have other actuaries like reviewing, and then they're like going back and forth all summer long, like trying to
Yeah.
say like, oh, this assumption is right or this assumption is wrong.
Yeah.
And so during those like reviews, like that's where like the hours can get long, and so it would maybe extend beyond your typical 9 to 5. If you're a
Okay.
consultant as well, and you're trying to manage a lot of clients, a lot of people say consulting is probably more hours than your typical 9 to 5. I find that at an insurance company, it is more like your typical 9 to 5,
Okay.
and
Okay.
it's a lot. You still have like your seasonality, and certain parts of the year are more busy than others, but um, over time, you get used to what you're working on, and it's not as stressful, I would say, as working in consulting or like doing
Yeah.
Medicare pricing and stuff like
Yeah. And so now we talked about the exams, but would you say that there are any other maybe certifications that are required or degrees that are required to be an actuary?
that. I don't know that there's any other certifications required. A lot of people that once they get their credential, they get like they become a member of the it's MAAA, so it's a member of the American Actuary. I forget the acronym because
That's okay.
I'm not part of that
Okay.
society yet.
Okay.
But that is another designation. There's another designation called SARA, which is a Certified Enterprise Risk Analyst. Both of those are not required, but people get them. In
Okay.
terms of like, do you need a degree to become an actuary? Do you need a specific degree? I would say the answer to that is no. The
Okay.
main focus is to, you know, get experience and then start passing exams and work your way through the
Yeah.
exam process. I know
Yeah.
people that were like in marketing and then transitioned to being an actuary, or like people that were
Oh,
musicians and then um,
interesting.
randomly decided to become an
Yeah.
actuary. And then the common one is actually like people going from teaching, like they're like a math teacher and then they transition to being an actuary. That one's really common.
Yeah. So what are some natural strengths that you think would make someone a very good actuary?
So I think number one being having like a strong statistical foundation
Okay.
that you can get through passing the exams and studying.
Okay.
Um, the second part is, and like this is very relevant for the actuarial profession, is judgment. Um, so a lot of times, especially in the actuarial world, the answer, nobody knows what the right answer is,
Okay.
because you're just kind of guessing at a number in the future.
Yeah.
And so, how can you use your judgment to arrive at an answer that at least seems reasonable and considers all the other external factors that can affect it? So, I'd
Okay.
say that is a really important quality to have. The
Yeah.
other part is um, patience. So, not jumping to an answer right away.
Okay.
Again, considering anything that could impact the answer before saying like, yes, this is the direction that I want to go.
Yeah. And so now we talked about SQL, but what are some other tools, technologies, or programs that you see that you use a lot as part of your job? Maybe softwares too.
So I mean, I use SQL a lot. I
Okay.
also use Excel. My company actually uses Google Sheets, but I still use Excel just because it's
Okay.
better. Yeah, so I use Excel slash Google Sheets. I also use a, I won't name the software, but I use a map making software
Okay.
um, to kind of define different territories
Yeah.
and like differentiate them for pricing purposes. Um, I know people out there use a software called like GGY Access. People use a lot of different database tools, and SAS, I think, is another big one.
Okay. Perfect. And so now we want to give our listeners a little bit of advice. So, what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in becoming actuaries do to set themselves apart from maybe other candidates?
Number one, if you're trying to get into the industry, is network. That
Okay.
was, I mean, I think that goes, the same goes for any industry.
For any, yeah.
Um, but that is really going to help you out a lot
Okay.
with opportunities, just knowing as many people as you can, especially in the actuarial space, because it's such a small community that um, as you like get further into your career, you start seeing a lot of the same people, and
Yeah.
so networking is really important. Um, I think these days it's also hard to find a job out of college unless you've had at least one or two exams passed. So you want to pass your exams in college, or at least a
Okay.
couple, and that will
Okay.
help set you apart. You can pass three or four even. The more exams you pass, the more you're going
The
to set
better.
yourself apart,
Yeah.
especially coming out
Okay.
of college. But there's a caveat to that where you maybe don't want to pass as many exams as possible, because then there gets to be a differential between like what the company is willing to pay you out of college and what they pay someone who's already
Okay.
credentialed. So you could be
Okay. I
credentialed out of
see.
college, and some companies might be willing to pay you like you are a credentialed actuary straight out of college, and
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Um, but other companies will be like, I mean, you don't have yes, you are a credentialed actuary, so like your pay is way up here, but or like could be way up here, but you're
Yeah.
straight out of college, you don't have any experience, you don't know how we operate. So that's where that kind of divide can come in.
Okay. So now talking kind of on the same lines as pay. So according to Google, the average salary for an actuary is around 100,000. Do you think that's an accurate number? What do you think?
It depends on your experience. I think
Okay.
that is accurate for maybe someone with 3 to 4 years of experience. I think if you've been in the industry for a while and you are credentialed, the average is probably a lot higher.
Okay. Great. That's all we needed to hear. Great. So now, what are some books or resources that you recommend our listeners check out if they want to become actuaries?
I think, well, a lot of actuaries are probably so busy studying, maybe they don't want to read a book, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, they, there are some good books out there. I actually have one behind me. It's, I believe it's like the Foundations of Policy
Okay.
Actuarial Society or whatever,
Okay.
or like, foundations of the stuff you need to know to be an actuary.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of the books that are geared towards actuaries, they're already like part of the exam process of like they make up the material for like the exams. So you
Okay.
learn a lot of that stuff through the exam process anyway.
Okay. That's great. So now, if you could talk to your younger self when you were just beginning as an actuary, what would you tell him?
I would say, keep staying disciplined. You're on the right path, and keep working hard.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, Will, that's all that we have for today. So, thank you so much for joining me and giving your insight on what it's like to be an actuary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Miranda.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!